The morning began like so many others, though the clock said otherwise. 4:58, a thin gray light pushing through the blinds, and Lena Riaz already awake with one twin tugging at her hair while the other wailed from the crib. She was used to the sound, but today it cut differently, sharper, like the world itself was reminding her there would be no rest. She warmed 2 bottles, balanced both girls on her lap, and held them steady as they fought for her attention, their tiny fists tapping against her collarbone. She glanced at the red circle on the wall calendar. Surgery day, tomorrow. Her phone buzzed on the counter, face down, and she knew before flipping it that it was the hospital. The surgeon's office confirmed the date, voice brisk, reminding her to arrange childcare. The words sank into her bones like stones thrown into a well. She said yes. She understood. She would be there. And then silence, except for the sound of her daughters drinking milk and the blood pounding in her ears. She tried to imagine tomorrow without fear, tried to see it as a simple errand, something temporary, but her chest tightened. She needed someone to hold the girls. Only a few hours, long enough for anesthesia, long enough for doctors to cut out what didn't belong inside her. It wasn't too much to ask. She called her mother first, because that was what daughters did. Mara's voice arrived before the second ring finished. "We can't cancel June's show, Lena. That would ruin everything." The casual cruelty of it landed like an open palm against her cheek. Lena gripped the counter. "I'm not asking you to cancel a vacation, Mom. It's surgery. A tumor. They need to take it out now. I just need you here for a few hours. The girls can't—" "You're being dramatic again." Her mother's tone sliced the words into ribbons. "You always think your problems outweigh everyone else's. Your sister's been preparing for this performance for months. We've already bought the tickets. Front row." She heard her father in the background, a muttered half-laugh. Always some emergency with her. "Can't she find someone else?" Lena pressed her palm against the counter until her nails dug grooves into the laminate. The twins shifted in her lap, oblivious. "Someone else," she repeated softly, tasting the bitterness of the phrase. The conversation spiraled the way so many before had. Mara insisting her life was not a stage for Lena's inconveniences, Omar mumbling about obligations, about timing. Every syllable an erasure. And Lena, 36 years old, realized she was still that girl who had carried the family's bills on her back since her first paycheck. Still the one who paid down her sister's debts, who bought her parents' groceries when their fridge went dry, who emptied her savings when they nearly lost the house. She had believed that kind of loyalty built a safety net. She had believed she had earned at least one day of care. But the silence that followed her plea was answer enough. Her mother said finally, "Maybe if you hadn't decided to have children without a father, you wouldn't be in this mess. We can't always save you, Lena." The line went dead. She stood there, the twins heavy against her arms, staring at the faint crack in the kitchen tile. She thought of calling back, of begging, but something in her refused. Instead, she dialed Marcus, her neighbor, the only person who had ever offered help without an invoice attached. He answered half asleep but told her yes, he'd be there. He'd take the girls while she was in surgery. His voice was warm, uncomplicated. Relief should have come. It didn't. Instead came something jagged, betrayal, so sharp it made her dizzy. By noon, she was at the hospital for pre-op tests. The fluorescent lights hummed, the scent of antiseptic clung to her clothes. A nurse checked her vitals and mentioned the insurance paperwork hadn't fully processed. Lena frowned. Her company plan should have covered everything. Then the nurse glanced at the tablet again and said, almost casually, "Strange. Looks like your emergency fund was applied as a deposit last month. Did you authorize that?" Her stomach nodded. She hadn't touched her emergency account in years. She asked for clarification, but the nurse shrugged, too busy to linger. Later, in her hospital bed, waiting for the surgeon to explain risks, she scrolled through her phone. The banking app flashed red, a transfer to a shared family fund account she barely remembered agreeing to years ago. Thousands gone. She scrolled faster, pulse racing. The destination account showed transactions labeled with vague descriptions. Event fees. Production costs. Travel. June. It had to be. Lena dropped the phone onto the sheets and closed her eyes. When she woke again, Marcus was there, holding one twin while the other slept in a stroller beside him. He smiled as if nothing in the world was wrong. "I'll handle them tomorrow," he said. "Don't worry. You just focus on getting better." She tried to smile back. The surgeon entered, clipboard in hand, speaking in that clipped, calm tone that made everything sound manageable. But Lena's mind wasn't on the surgery anymore. It was on the ledger glowing behind her eyelids. The numbers that had disappeared. The invisible hands pulling from her savings while her mother told her she was dramatic. That night, alone in the hospital room, she scrolled deeper. Months of siphoning, always small enough to seem harmless, but together a tide. She recognized her mother's name on one transfer, her father's on another. And then June's, bold and unashamed. She remembered her mother's words on the phone. "We can't cancel June's show." Now she knew why. It wasn't just about tickets. It was an entire production, built partly on Lena's money. She pressed her head into the pillow, tears burning, though not from sadness. From rage. When morning came, the twins already safe with Marcus, Lena was wheeled into pre-op. She thought she might die on the table. She thought she might wake to find her life more shredded than it already was. But what consumed her, more than the fear of death, was the ledger she hadn't agreed to keep. The anesthesia blurred the ceiling tiles into a white ocean. She sank, but even as she drifted, she whispered to herself, "They think I'll always carry them. They think I won't fight back." She dreamed then, a childhood memory. Her sister, 12 years old, singing in the living room while her mother clapped like the world itself was applauding. Lena, standing in the doorway, holding a stack of dishes she had just washed. She remembered the ache in her arms, the longing for a glance of pride that never came. When she woke, hours later, the surgeon said the tumor was out, that they had acted in time. Relief washed through her like cool water. But it was brief, because Marcus leaned in and whispered, "While you were under, another transfer went out. Same account." Her throat tightened. Even unconscious, she was being bled. Marcus showed her his phone. He had logged into her account, with her permission from before. The transfer had gone directly to June. It wasn't a rumor anymore. It was proof. Shock should have pinned her to the bed. Instead, something steadier settled in. Clarity. She realized her family wasn't just neglectful, wasn't just selfish. They were stealing from her systematically, while she lay fighting to survive. She closed her eyes. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow's recovery. She was afraid of what she might do once she was strong enough to stand. Lena's body ached from the incision, but her mind wouldn't rest. The surgeon's words about recovery blurred, and the sound of monitors faded in and out. What stayed sharp was the sight of Marcus holding his phone, showing her the new transfer. Even while she was unconscious, money had been pulled from her account. Not a mistake, not a glitch, a theft. The nurses urged her to rest, but rage kept her awake. When she finally drifted into shallow sleep, she dreamed of ledgers with endless columns of red, numbers spilling like blood across pages, her parents and sister scribbling their names at the bottom as if signing a contract. She woke with her pulse hammering. By the third day, she was stable enough to walk slowly around her room. Marcus wheeled the twins in, and their squeals of joy pierced the fog of betrayal clinging to her. She held them carefully, pressing her face to their soft hair, and whispered that she would never let anyone hurt them. Not the way she had been hurt. That evening, she logged into her bank again, determined to study every transfer. She traced the entries back 6 months. Each time she had covered her parents' groceries or sent money for utilities, the amounts had been rerouted into a different account. Some of those amounts matched ticket purchases and production fees listed in her sister's name. Other transfers were stranger, large sums with vague notes like consulting and venue. It wasn't only about a concert anymore. Something larger was happening, and her family was using her as the quiet investor. The next morning, her parents arrived at the hospital. Mara came in wearing a bright scarf, her face lit as though she were visiting a friend after brunch rather than a daughter recovering from major surgery. Omar trailed behind, carrying a bouquet of carnations. "How are you feeling?" Mara asked, her voice syrupy but distant. "I'd be better if I still had my savings," Lena said flatly. Her mother blinked, then recovered. Savings are meant to be used, darling. You can't take money with you when you die. Her father shifted uncomfortably, placing the flowers on the side table. Your mother means, you'll land on your feet, you always do. Lena stared at them, measuring her words. I saw the transfers. To June. To that so-called family account. While I was in surgery, more money disappeared. How long has this been happening? Mara's smile tightened. Don't be melodramatic. We borrowed a little, that's all. It's all for the family. June has a future, Lena. Her music doesn't pay my bills. Lena snapped, her voice rising. It doesn't keep a roof over my daughters' heads. I've been covering you for years and you've been stealing from me behind my back. Omar raised a hand, placating. Don't turn this into a scene. We've supported you in other ways. You always twist things, Lena laughed, bitter and hollow. Support me? By what? Ignoring my graduation? By taking my money every time you fall short? By calling me dramatic when I'm on an operating table? Her words hung heavy in the sterile room. For a moment, even Mara's mask slipped. Then she leaned in, her voice low and sharp. You should be grateful. Without us, you wouldn't even have a family name to raise those children under. We've sacrificed for you more than you'll ever know. Sacrifice. The word rattled inside Lena like broken glass. When they left, Marcus stepped in. He had been waiting outside, listening. He placed a hand on her arm. They're hiding something bigger. This isn't just about tickets or vanity. I looked deeper, Lena. I found an application for a loan, using your name. It was denied, but the signature matches your mother's handwriting. Lena's blood chilled. Forgery? He nodded. They tried to open credit under your identity. If I hadn't pulled the file, you might never have known. Her knees nearly buckled. The betrayal wasn't only emotional or financial anymore. It was criminal. That night, she couldn't sleep. She sat by the hospital window, staring at the city lights. Her twins curled safely nearby. She replayed every year of sacrifice, every bill she had paid, every time she had told herself family was everything. And now she saw it clearly. What they had called family was dependency dressed as love. On the fourth day, she signed her discharge papers and returned home with Marcus helping to carry the twins. Her apartment felt smaller than she remembered, the air heavy with secrets. She set the girls down and sat at her kitchen table with Marcus and the stack of bank statements he had printed. Here's the trail, he said, spreading the pages like cards in a losing hand. It all funnels into one main account. Guess whose name is on it? June's, Lena said. He shook his head. Your mother's. June has access, but Mara controls it. Lena stared at the ink, her mother's name bold and undeniable. The ground beneath her life shifted. By evening, her phone buzzed with a text from June. Not a question about her health. Not a word of concern. Just don't make a big deal about the money. It's complicated. We'll talk later. Later. Always later when the damage was already done. She deleted the message and held her daughters close, her mind racing. The following weekend, she attended the family dinner Mara insisted on hosting. Marcus urged caution, but Lena needed to see them face to face. She brought the twins, walked into the house that smelled of cinnamon and deceit, and sat at the polished table. June arrived late, her hair styled for the stage, her eyes lined in black. She barely looked at Lena before launching into a story about rehearsals, about a producer interested in her songs. Mara clapped. Omar nodded proudly. Lena listened, her anger simmering. Then she slid the printed bank statements across the table. Explain these. The laughter in the room died. June's face drained of color. Mara's eyes flashed with fury, not guilt. Omar looked at his lap. You had no right digging through that, Mara hissed. I had every right, Lena said. It's my money, my future, my children's security. And you've been stealing it. It wasn't stealing, Mara snapped. It was investing. June has talent. We're building something for this family. You'll all benefit when she succeeds. Lena's hand trembled. You risked my daughter's future for a gamble. June finally spoke, her voice shaking. It wasn't just for me. There's someone. I owed money, a lot of money. If I didn't pay, things would get bad. The confession hit like a thunderclap. Mara gasped, covering her mouth. Omar muttered. We said not to tell her. Lena leaned forward. What kind of debt? June's eyes brimmed with tears. A loan from a manager. He said he'd help launch my career. But when I couldn't pay back, he threatened me. He said he'd ruin me, ruin all of us. Mom said we could use your account just until I got on my feet. Silence choked the room. Lena's chest felt tight, her breath shallow. It wasn't just vanity, it was blackmail. And her family had decided her hard-earned money was easier to sacrifice than the truth. You should have come to me, Lena said quietly. You would have said no, June whispered. You're damn right I would have said no, Lena snapped. Because it's fraud. Because it's theft. Because I nearly lost everything while you were covering up lies. Her mother's face hardened. Don't act so righteous. We did this to protect the family. Sometimes sacrifices must be made. Lena stood, her body still weak from surgery, but her voice steady. Sacrifice isn't taking from the one person who's been holding this family together. Sacrifice isn't betrayal. She lifted her twins from their chairs, their small bodies warm against her shoulders, and walked out of the house without looking back. But the battle wasn't over. Because as she drove home, her phone lit up with a notification from the bank. Another attempt had been made to access her credit, this time flagged as suspicious. The name attached was her own. The hand behind it, she knew, was Mara's. Her family hadn't just stolen. They were still trying. And Lena realized as the twins slept in their car seats that she stood at a crossroads. She could stay silent and let the cycle continue. Or she could expose them, even if it meant burning every bridge she had left. The choice would define everything. The rain fell hard against the apartment windows, tracing silver streams down the glass as Lena sat in the darkened living room. The twins were asleep in their cribs, the steady rhythm of their breathing a fragile reminder of innocence in a world that had turned cruel. On the table before her lay the latest bank notification. Another attempt at credit fraud. Another reminder that her family had not stopped feeding on her like wolves even after she'd confronted them. She wanted to believe there was some corner of them still human, still protective of her the way she had always tried to be of them. But each new betrayal smothered that hope. Marcus came in from the kitchen, a mug of coffee in his hand. He set it down in front of her, his eyes tracing the lines of exhaustion in her face. You're thinking about them again, he said softly. They won't stop, she whispered. I walk away and they follow me into my accounts. I call them thieves, and they call it sacrifice. They're not ashamed. They believe they deserve it. Marcus sat across from her, his gaze steady. Then you need to make a decision. Either cut them out completely or take them down. No more in between. The words sat heavy between them. Taking them down meant exposing everything. Her parents' lies, her sister's debt, the forged applications. It meant dragging family into courtrooms and headlines. It meant raising her daughters with the knowledge that their grandparents had chosen greed over love. But Lena knew one thing with absolute certainty. If she didn't end it, they would destroy her and the twins in their hunger. The next day, she began her quiet war. She visited the bank, closed all joint links, moved her remaining funds into a new account under strict protection. She requested copies of every suspicious transaction and opened an official fraud investigation. The clerk looked at her with sympathy when she admitted her own mother was the likely culprit. She left the bank trembling, but stronger than she had felt in weeks. At night, she began keeping a journal of evidence. Every transfer, every text, every confrontation. Marcus helped her build files, organizing them into neat binders. If they force your hand, he said, this will be your weapon. The first retaliation came quickly. Her mother called late one evening, her voice sharp and cold. What have you done, Lena? The bank is questioning us. They froze certain transfers. Do you realize what you've started? I started protecting myself, Lena said. You selfish, ungrateful girl, Mara spat. Everything we did was for you. You think Marcus is on your side? He's poisoning you against us. You'll regret this. Lena hung up before the venom could spread further. Her hands shook as she placed the phone down. Marcus touched her shoulder. They're rattled. That means you're hitting where it hurts. But the next twist cut deeper than she expected. A week later, Lena returned home from the grocery store to find a letter slipped under her door. No envelope, just paper folded once. She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a message scrawled in June's handwriting. "Stop this, Lena. You don't understand. He's watching me. If you expose Mom, you expose me. And if you expose me, he'll come after all of us. Please, don't do this." The words crawled over her skin like ice. Who was the manager June had mentioned? A predator behind her debts? Lena realized the danger might not only be betrayal from within, but a threat lurking outside, someone pulling the strings. That night, she dreamed of faceless men at her door, of her children being pulled from her arms. She woke drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. The following morning, Marcus urged her to take the letter seriously. If there's someone else involved, this could be bigger than family drama. "We need to know who he is." They dug deeper. Marcus reached out to contacts in the local arts scene, asking quietly about June's so-called manager. The answers came back fragmented but chilling. He wasn't a licensed manager. He had a reputation for exploiting hopefuls, dangling promises of fame in exchange for debts that were never meant to be repaid. Some said he used intimidation. Others said blackmail. One whispered that girls who couldn't pay sometimes disappeared. Lena's stomach churned. This wasn't just about stolen money. June had tied the entire family to a dangerous predator. That evening, Lena confronted June outside a rehearsal hall. Her sister jumped when she saw her, eyes red from crying. "You don't belong here," June hissed. "I need to know who he is," Lena said, stepping closer. "What did you sign? What does he have on you?" June shook her head violently. "You'll make it worse. Just leave it. Mom said she'd handle it. Please, just back off." "Back off?" Lena's voice cracked. "You dragged me into this when you forged my name. He's already inside my life, June. If you don't tell me, I'll find out anyway." June's eyes darted nervously over Lena's shoulder. She whispered, "He's here." Lena turned. Across the street, a man in a dark coat leaned against a lamppost, smoking, his gaze fixed on them. His posture was casual, but there was nothing casual about the way his eyes lingered. Marcus, who had followed Lena from a distance, stepped between them, his body tense. The man flicked his cigarette to the ground, smirked, and walked away into the shadows. The encounter left Lena shaken. It confirmed her worst fear. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. It was a game of survival. Back at the apartment, Lena held her twins close, whispering promises she wasn't sure she could keep. She realized then that the fight had outgrown secrets and shame. It was now about protecting her daughters from predators, inside and outside the family. The weeks that followed unraveled like a storm. Mara grew more hostile, sending voice messages filled with venom about loyalty and betrayal. Omar stayed silent, a ghostly figure caught between denial and complicity. June avoided Lena, her eyes always shadowed, her laughter forced at family gatherings. She begged Lena not to attend, but Lena pressed forward, driven by anger sharpened into purpose. She filed a police report, attaching the evidence of fraud. She met with a lawyer who explained the gravity of forgery and identity theft, even when committed by relatives. The lawyer asked her gently if she was prepared for the consequences. "Yes," Lena said. "For my daughters, yes." The trial of truth began in whispers, but quickly grew into war. Her parents arrived at her apartment one night uninvited, pounding on the door. Marcus urged her not to open it, but she did. Mara stormed in, eyes blazing. "You've gone too far," she said. "You want to drag us into court? To shame us? After everything we've done for you?" "You've done nothing for me but take," Lena replied, her voice like steel. "And I won't let you take from my children." "You're no daughter of mine," Mara spat. The words hit like a blade, but instead of bleeding, Lena felt herself harden. "Maybe I never was." Omar, standing in the doorway, whispered, "Mara, stop." But his voice carried no authority, only fear. They left, slamming the door. The silence that followed felt like both an ending and a beginning. The following day, Lena received another note, this one typed, unsigned. It read, "Drop the case or the children won't be safe." Her breath caught. This wasn't family anymore. This was the man June feared. The predator had noticed her defiance. She showed Marcus, who insisted on calling the police immediately. But Lena hesitated. If the man was as dangerous as rumors said, police involvement might escalate things before she was ready. Still, she couldn't ignore the threat. That night, she packed emergency bags for the twins, tucking them under the crib. She rehearsed what she would do if someone came pounding on the door in the middle of the night. She felt like prey. But inside her, a fiercer instinct was awakening, the instinct of a mother ready to bite back. It was in those sleepless nights, watching shadows move across her window, that Lena made her final decision. She would not simply defend herself, she would strike first. And in that decision lay the seed of her transformation. From the betrayed daughter who had once begged for scraps of love, to the avenger who would burn down every false bond to protect what was truly hers. The storm wasn't over. It was only gathering its full force. The first snow of the season drifted silently across Portland the night Lena decided she would no longer play defense. For weeks she had waited, watched shadows creep outside her window, jumped at every sound in the hallway. She had kept the twins close, slept with her phone clutched in her hand, the weight of fear pressing her chest like a stone. But fear had transformed into something sharper. Rage, yes, but more than that, clarity. She had been the family's lifeline for too long. Their scapegoat, their safety net, their silent sacrifice. And now a predator, faceless, nameless but real, had been drawn into her orbit. If she surrendered now, she would lose more than her savings. She would lose her daughters, her freedom, maybe even her life. Marcus found her sitting at the kitchen table that night, her laptop open, papers spread like a battlefield map. "You've decided," he said, his voice low but steady. She nodded, her jaw tight. "I'm done waiting for them to destroy me. I'm going to expose him, and if that means exposing them too, then so be it." "Lena," he hesitated, then pulled out a chair beside her. "This isn't just about fraud anymore. If this man is as dangerous as we think, you're risking everything." "I know." She looked him in the eye. "But if I don't do it, I'm risking more." The plan was simple in outline, but treacherous in execution. She would gather the final pieces of evidence, emails, bank records, forged signatures, and she would deliver them not just to the police, but to the press. Her parents' fraud, June's entanglement, the manager's predation, all of it would be laid bare under public light. No more secrets whispered in family kitchens, no more gaslighting phone calls. Truth would be her weapon. But the predator moved first. 2 nights later, Lena returned home to find her apartment door ajar. Her heart stopped. She rushed inside, calling the twins' names. They were safe, still asleep in their cribs, but the living room was ransacked. Drawers pulled open, files scattered across the floor, and pinned to the refrigerator with a kitchen knife was a photo. A photo of her and the twins in the park, taken from a distance. Her blood turned to ice. This wasn't a warning. It was a promise. She called Marcus, her voice trembling. He arrived within minutes, his face pale as he scanned the apartment. "He knows where you live. This isn't safe anymore. You and the girls need to get out." But Lena shook her head, fury hardening her resolve. "No, he thinks he can scare me into silence. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I've survived." That night, she packed a bag with the most critical evidence and hid it in a safe place outside the apartment. She refused to let him find it. She refused to let fear dictate her next move. The confrontation came sooner than she expected. One evening, June showed up at her door, pale and shaking. "He's losing patience," she whispered. "He knows you've gone to the bank. He thinks you're going to the police. He says if you don't drop this, he'll make an example of you." Lena's voice was cold. "Then tell me his name." "Tell me everything," June sobbed, clutching her hands. "I can't. He'll kill me." "You think he won't kill me?" Lena shot back. "Or the girls? You dragged me into this, June. If you want to save anyone, you'll tell me now." For the first time, June broke. She whispered the name, and with it came the truth. A mid-level criminal known for preying on vulnerable women, laundering money through fake contracts, and using intimidation to silence those who fought back. Lena felt sick, but also strangely vindicated. At last, the shadow had a face. Marcus urged her to run. "We can disappear. Change your number, move to another city. He'll lose interest. But Lena knew better. Predators don't lose interest. They move on to someone else. If I don't stop him, he'll just take another girl. Maybe another sister, another mother. The final act began with Lena walking straight into the lion's den. With Marcus at her side, she arranged a meeting under the pretense of negotiating. June, terrified, gave them the location. A seedy bar on the east side where the manager held his appointments. Lena left the twins with a trusted neighbor, her heart breaking as she kissed their foreheads. She prayed she would return to them whole. The bar reeked of smoke and stale beer. In the corner, at a table littered with empty glasses, he waited. Dark coat, cold eyes, that same smirk she'd seen across the street weeks ago. "So," he drawled, as Lena sat down opposite him, Marcus hovering nearby. "The famous sister finally shows her face. Brave or stupid?" "Neither," Lena said evenly. "I'm done playing games. I know about the contracts. I know about the debts. And I have every piece of evidence I need to bury you." His smile widened. "Do you? Or do you just think you do?" He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "You've got 2 babies. Sweet little things. Shame if they grew up without a mother." Her pulse thundered, but she didn't flinch. "You won't touch them. Because if anything happens to me, or to them, the files go public. Every contract, every name, every scam. I've made sure of it." For the first time, his smirk faltered. Marcus slid a small USB drive across the table. "Consider this a sample," he said. "We've already distributed copies. If you want to walk away, now's your chance." The predator's eyes flicked between them, calculating. He leaned back, his tone shifting to menace. "You think you're clever, but you're not the first to threaten me, and you won't be the last. Walk away, little girl, or you'll regret it." But Lena didn't walk away. The next morning, the Portland Gazette ran the headline, "Local Family Fraud Linked to Exploitation Scheme." The story detailed everything: Mara and Omar's financial schemes, June's entanglement, and the predator's long history of coercion. Names, numbers, proof. Lena had leaked it all. The fallout was immediate. Mara called, screaming, threatening, sobbing. Omar begged for forgiveness. June disappeared, her phone disconnected. But the real battle was with him. The predator who suddenly found himself exposed to public scrutiny, police interest, and the fury of women who had once been too afraid to speak. He tried to fight back. Anonymous threats escalated. Shadows lingered near her building. Her tires were slashed one morning. But Lena was no longer alone. Marcus stood beside her. The police now took her seriously, and other victims began coming forward. The walls closed in on him, not her. And then, one snowy evening, he vanished. No one knew if he fled the city, was taken down by rivals, or slipped underground to start again elsewhere. But Lena knew one thing: he would never again control her life. The silence that followed was not peace, not yet. Her family was shattered. Mara and Omar faced legal consequences for fraud. June remained estranged, lost in her own choices. Lena felt grief, yes, but also something sharper. Cleaner, freedom. For the first time, she stood unshackled. Months later, she walked through the park with Sophia and Grace toddling at her side, their small hands gripping hers. The air smelled of spring, alive with possibility. Marcus trailed a few steps behind, carrying their picnic basket, his smile warm and unguarded. Lena paused under a blooming cherry tree, the petals drifting around them like confetti. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. For years she had bent under the weight of obligation, sacrifice, and betrayal. Now she felt light. Her family had tried to break her. The predator had tried to own her. But she had risen, scarred yet stronger, her daughters safe at her side. And as she knelt to kiss the crowns of their heads, she whispered a promise she finally knew she could keep. "You'll never inherit my chains, only my freedom." The wind carried her words, scattering them with the petals, as if the universe itself bore witness to her vow. It wasn't the life she once imagined, but it was hers, hard-won, unbreakable, and true, and that was enough.